Whatever your field is, your local community, how can you be part of the solution? This is Byron and Nicole White, and you are tuned into episode 124 of The Real Word.
Word is up. Wow, you did my name today.
I wanted to make sure.
Did you feel like you did it differently? Because it sounded way different. Like White.
Yeah, I always emphasize my name, so I'm trying to get better every day at giving you the love you deserve.
So was that was your effort for today?
That's my effort.
Saying my name louder?
Saying your name so that people know who you are.
Wow.
All right. We've got racket number one, not a racket, totally not a racket.
No.
But it is our first segment and our first topic. And
yeah, it's an interesting one since you said white.
Ooh.
And it's interesting because we were, my husband and I were actually out to dinner last night, sitting outside of a, downtown, right where we live.
Right.
And a whole car load of high school, because my husband teaches at the high school.
Yeah. Mr. White.
Mr. White. So they drove by and started yelling out the window, like, "Hey, Mr. White, Coach White." And I have to tell you that the entire restaurant was like, where we had to
show ID after?
Well, we had to explain that. Yeah. So we're definitely living in interesting times.
Well,
so
probably because of the way high school kids do it. They're naturally annoying.
Well, yeah. But again, I think obviously there's lots of topics to be discussed around that
There's
topic.
a lot of, it's a sensitive subject, obviously. So, but this topic that I'm about to present to you, all of our racketeers out there, is definitely not a racket. And it's something that if you're watching this show, if you've been listening to The Real Word, then you're probably in the real estate industry to some degree. And it's an investigation we all need to be aware of and educated on. There was a 3-year Newsday investigation which uncovered widespread evidence of unequal treatment from real estate agents in Long Island.
Right.
Okay, so they focused on a specific area of Long Island. They had 25, let me just frame this up real quick, 25 testers.
Yep.
They had tested 93 agents in 240 hours of secret meetings. There was over 5,700 listings that were analyzed. And in that investigation, 40% of the time, they found that unequal treatment to minorities, when compared white versus minorities, 40% overall of the tests, there was unequal treatment delivered, 19% for Asians, 39% for Hispanics, and 49% for blacks.
Well, so I think it's also worth stating the reason why they decided to do this investigation was because it sounds as though Long Island is so wildly segregated already, and they were trying to figure out why it continues to be segregated and who is actually sort of feeding the segregation. So so I think it's worth stating that, Long Island wasn't just like pulled out of the hat. They were looking at the demographic across the entire island and were noticing sort of these staggering numbers. So they, of course, decided to sort of hit up the agents to see if maybe they were continuing to feed the trend. So very interesting.
And I would encourage everyone to watch the documentary. The link is definitely going to wherever you're listening or watching this. It'll be available for you in the show notes or the YouTube description. Watch this documentary. Yeah, the agents clearly are playing a part in this, Nicole, but there's a lot to it.
Of course. No, I was just explaining kind of like, I think, why they were drawn to Long Island.
Well, here's what I believe. I mean, if you found 40%, so Steve Harney, who's an economist, Keeping Current Matters, we've talked about Steve in the past, he had a tweet that said, wow, this is a blue state, number one, New York. This is the Northeast of America, where you have more highly educated people per capita than other parts of the country. And this happened there. So if you take this, I understand, and they go into the investigation that Long Island does have clear segregation that has continued into 2020. But if you spread this test across the United States of America,
absolutely. Well,
these numbers I bet are going to be similar, higher in some places, probably lower in other places. You know, there's going to be, and it all depends on what 93 agencies. How did they do the test? What all the, you know, there's all kinds of questions. I'm sure Newsday relied on 2 nationally recognized experts in fair housing standards to evaluate
they were killing
the agent's actions.
They've been on the board. They've been on court things.
This is Fred Freeberg, who co-founded the Fair Housing Justice Center in 2004. Previously, he had led a national testing program for the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice, as well as 2 national paired testing programs for the Urban Institute. He has coordinated more than 12,000 fair housing tests. He was paid to help organize the testing. Robert Schwim.
Take a breath.
Robert Schwim of the Everett H. Metcalf Jr. Professor of Law at the University of Kentucky. This guy was also involved, who's the author of Housing Discrimination Law and Litigation. So these 2 guys were involved. But here's the other thing. When you watch the documentary, and you did, and they have the interviews of the white tester and the minority tester sitting side by side, that's when you knew this shit was done right. It was legit. It was real. When those 2 individuals, their emotions of going through the process as the tester.
Right. And they were, I mean, and they spent hours, days, I think even months
together,
being programmed to answer questions. Right.
I said this, role playing it out.
And they were still emotional to see, I mean, not that they wouldn't have been, but
they were in disbelief of the results that they found. And just based off of that.
And they were going to the same agent. So like if I was partnered up with you, we were both independently seeing the same agent, so asking the same questions, giving the same criteria, and then the response from that agent from one to the other was wildly, drastically different.
Agent Ann, I'll just refer to her as Agent Ann. If you watch it, you get her full name and her brokerage and everything.
Yeah.
She physically met with, you know, a white home buyer and a black home buyer. And that one was really bad. I mean, it was just really awful. To the white home buyer, when can you get started? Like almost like she seemed, you know, we say commission breath. She had commission breath of like, when can you get started? I want to get you right out there. Like, when can you start looking at homes? She was driving the conversation of looking at homes with the black tester, and both of them met her in person in her office.
Right. Nothing was different. They were, as much as you could take any variable out, they did.
Nothing was different. And with the black tester, she said, I won't, this is quoting, I won't take out anyone unless you have a pre-qualification letter. She said none of that to the white tester in her office. Now, I don't know about you, Nicole, but anytime I get anybody to actually physically be in the office here and, you know, in my real estate career, 100% of the time I close them. You know, they buy a property 100% of the time if they actually come into the office, because you gain so much, even if it's long term. It's like, hey, I've met you now. I have a vested interest in you as the human. And if you even have to go through like credit repair or whatever, 100% of the time, those people that are committed to coming into the office buy. I mean, this person outright.
Well, and the agent
she
even
outright didn't want to work with this person.
But the agent even committed to having them come into the office. I mean, that's a whole extra step too, unless they just walked in. Maybe they walked in.
It was crazy. The testing was extremely legitimate. Again, when you see the interviews of the testers, the white and the minority tester, and that emotion, you knew this was done with a lot of practice, with a lot of thought. 240 hours of secret meetings were recorded. 5,700 listings. That's just incredible depth and data that they went into.
Another thing that we should note too, because I did send this actually to a few other people, and people couldn't believe that they were even able to record these things. But I guess New York is a single person state where only one person
has to know about the recording. So
right.
obviously the recorder would know.
Right.
One of those
situations.
You couldn't do that here in Connecticut, I guess, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming. I don't know the laws. I mean, gosh, I thought that was like the law everywhere, not being able to do that. But anyway.
And so here's the point, right?
I think there's multiple points.
There's multiple points, obviously, but this is clear. Let's just call it what it is. This is clear evidence of systematic Did I say that right? Systematic?
You did.
Systemic?
Well,
I think it's systemic.
Oh, it is?
Not systematic. But
Systemic?
It's like a word. Systematic.
We're trying to be big here. We're trying to be big here. Let's not try to be big. Let's keep in our own shoes.
No, this is clear. Systemic unequal treatment or racism, however you want to call it, right? And I mean, you had agents that knew they delivered unequal treatment and then wouldn't deliver a statement.
Well, right.
And wouldn't get on. Some people did participate. Some of these agents did participate and make at least a statement to Newsday. But some of them have just still been ignoring Newsday's calls to this day.
Yeah.
So
I think even as an agent, I think that, I mean, well, regardless of your whatever, I think it's certainly worth watching.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing that you can do besides being flabbergasted is to reflect. I mean, there were so many times that, you know, they were talking about even schools or areas and like you have to, like as an individual, like reflect, like, have I ever done that? Have I ever
said don't go there because that school system is bad?
Right.
That is.
I mean, even just have I ever treated anybody? Have I ever made anybody feel as though I've treated them differently?
And if you're bashing on a school system, you better have data to back it up, and you better bash that school system consistently across the board.
Well, you shouldn't be talking about school systems
with every single
at all.
No, you can talk about statistics.
Statistics, yes,
behind school systems.
Well, but they're not saying that really. I mean, they're talking about nice, like this woman's talking about, you know, which areas are nice. I mean, that's not really giving.
You had one agent literally say the word steering. I'm not supposed to steer you, but I'm about to steer you.
Right.
And then went ahead and steered that particular
So again,
buyer.
I think what's important to learn here too, and they did touch on it as well, is education. You know, are agents being educated in fair housing? Are they taking it seriously? Are they understanding, you know, the significance of it and being lawful?
That's exactly right. It's going to come down to you, the broker, the team leader, the agent, the individual agent out there, to educate yourself. Don't rely on the 3 hours of continuing training that you're just going click, 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 next slide through anyways.
Well, did you watch too? Because they had,
they
actually went to the meeting and the woman didn't even talk about fair housing.
She completely skipped over. She goes, I think that covers that.
Yeah.
It was very flippant. It was just like,
Again, I think, I mean, whether you have a good leader or not, I mean, I think that there is a lot of, you know, you have to be self-responsible, like be responsible for yourself. You don't because you can't blame somebody else if they didn't teach you. I think you need to take the initiative to learn and to continue to learn.
One thing I know for us, we're doing training on it this week. We're doing 2 pieces of training on this investigation and then one with an attorney on treating everyone equally. Not saying that we have any issues with unequal treatment. We've never had an issue, but I want to be so educated on this topic that we're part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I think that's what everybody can do. And whatever your field is, your local community, how can you be part of the solution? I'm for people protesting and speaking their mind. This is America, baby. Like, speak your mind. But also become part of the solution. Take action. A protest is a start of a conversation. It's not action to actually solving a problem. Right? I'm for it. But I'm also for people digging into what they know best. We know real estate best. How can we make change in our little world? We have a very small piece of the puzzle here of the community.
Right.
Real estate in our local community.
Well, and clearly we're super influential in those communities as well. So
and so how can you educate your people to actually be ahead of this? Ahead of this is the wrong word. To be somebody who calls out unequal treatment in their office, who identifies it, who's educated on it thoroughly, and who treats everybody the same in every single situation.
Right.
So we're going to train on this. We're not going to forget about this. We're going to continue to work to be better at this and continue to build systems that align with doing everything the same for others. I mean, one buyer got sent like 90 listings and the other one 0, like
in
the
totally different
there.
areas. Yeah, no, it was very interesting. And I'm hopeful that this, because we actually, we talked about this documentary back in January with our predictions for the year. And I'm hopeful because look, it was published.
Brad Inman predicted when we did the 2020 predictions that it would win some kind of Emmy.
Yeah. So again, I mean, it's unfortunate everything that is happening and that. But it's also very much fortunate because I think that these conversations do need to be had and continue to be had. So I think that the timing of this hopefully being, sort of.
And our marketeer of the week, after we get through here, the next segment, racket number 2, is going to be back kind of based on this topic. Right. But before that, racket number 2. We've got the Coldwell Banker CEO again, Ryan Gorman. We've got the hots for him, I think, right now. We've been talking about him a lot on this show.
Well, Inman's been talking about him a lot.
Inman has been, and the Coldwell Banker CEO on the future of real estate offices says...
I actually really enjoyed reading this article.
Are you going to let me finish anything today?
Yeah, well, I've let you actually speak quite a bit.
He says, less rent and more happy hours. Get on the bandwagon, Ryan. I've been talking about this forever. Mm-hmm. We designed an entire office, the one we're sitting in, around that theme. Mm-hmm. Maybe not less rent, but definitely more happy hours. And so they've got like 600 offices or something, right? Is that what it was?
A lot. There's a lot
700
of offices.
That he's specifically talking about.
Right.
They want to maximize effectiveness and allocate savings. They're also trying to raise $400 million because the Cartus deal isn't going through. So they're trying to raise $400 million because that deal's not going through.
But they are using the money that they're saving to reinvest. So this is probably part of it.
They're going to hopefully save some money here. The judge is letting their lawsuit against Realogy or against Compass, Realogy's lawsuit against Compass go through, which is not specifically Coldwell Banker. Right. But anyways, future of offices, do you agree a place to collaborate, train, and do happy hours?
I agree. I mean, I think that I think that's always been the purpose of an office, right? I think it's always been as much as you have your own little desk. I mean, he's talking about having like these pop-up like hybrid where you just sort of come in and use a space. Again, we kind of have that here. I think though, again, like we've also sort of manipulated, or I shouldn't say manipulated, but we sort of had to bob and weave too, because people do kind of like having their own, feeling like they have their own space. But I do think that the office should 100%, encourage, my mind is.
I mean, ours is completely open.
No,
it should encourage.
Well, and they're all sitting at the collaboration. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that instead of sort of giving everybody their own little cubicles and sort of setting them up in their little areas, I think that it's smart. I think it's a great place for you to collaborate, especially in the real estate market. I mean, as much as we are all sort of working for ourselves and for lack of a better word, we're all each other's competition, we also can learn so much from each other.
And I've never actually seen, in my years in the traditional brokerages and the offices I've experienced locally, I've never seen anybody besides top producers, besides the top 10% of producers, sitting in the office day by day and grinding out their work.
Right.
Everybody else does it at home, on the fly, in the car, whatever.
Right.
Every other agent does it that way. And so to the CEO's, Ryan Gorman's point here, why couldn't you just support your top 10% of agents of having a satellite office or give them a good enough split where they can go out and get their own office and their own space, reduce the amount of offices that people can get to. I mean, I think he's missing the boat on one big thing. Like, we have a podcast studio in our office for a reason. Like, without the podcast studio, trust me, there would be no office here.
Well, I think what he's encouraging, and which many people are now, is community. And he is, though, wanting to continue to have these office spaces and offering them out to their community. So maybe a PTO meeting can happen there. So it is very much multi-purpose, multi-use, and a way to get these people into that space too, which inevitably potentially benefits their agents if
ours
they're
is set up
connecting
for events, for photo shoots, and for video recording podcasts. That's what it's here for. And there's onboarding going on right now. We have 2 new agents that are onboarding with Lucy, so it works well for that. We have multiple TV screens, Apple TV, so you can zoom up and people can be from wherever, anywhere, if it's during a meeting. But you know the deal. Agents the trend is not going to be that agents are going to be sitting 8 hours in the office. That's never going to happen.
Well, especially now with everyone having to be remote too, I think it's really sort of rewiring.
Put the nail in that coffin.
Right. It's rewiring everybody's brain to now realize that they don't have to go to an office anymore. And obviously working from home can potentially give you a little bit more movement.
One of the comments, welcome to the future. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, but
maybe it's not the future, like welcome to now.
And in the CEO's defense here, in Gorman's defense, like, you have 700 offices. Like, how could you at that size even think about pivoting 2 years ago? Now the pivot has become like, you have to do it. But what's
super interesting, though, is because he does mention, though, in this article that during the market crash, they did start doing short-term rentals when they were signing their leases. So maybe he didn't really realize why he was doing it until now, but they were starting to pivot, I think, as much as they could. They're a huge national company. So I think at that point, they started to make the shift, and now they're able to really execute on sort of what they laid the groundwork for, 5-6 years ago. So I'm interested to see how those offices turn out. I wonder if there are going to be any local ones, or maybe some of our local competition is leaving the strip. What do you think?
Maybe possible.
Who knows? Anyway.
All right, Marketeer of the Week. It's not a specific listing or a specific tactic that you can use, but a conversation we wanted to highlight. Inman had their first ever Inman Connect virtual.
I did. Did you catch any of it?
I caught some of it.
Okay.
Yep. It was good, and what I caught was good. And this particular panel, I believe, was from Inman Connect. I think it was an Inman Connect panel. Anyways, it was a conversation from Katie Lance, Kendall Bonner, and Victoria Kennedy. They say agents shouldn't be afraid to talk about controversial topics. Now is not the time for marketing as usual. Certainly, we talked about that 2 months ago.
We've been talking about it the entire time, yes.
And then now, obviously, with everything that's happened in the last 2 weeks of this country with the George Floyd murder, you want to be conscious of what you're posting on social media. For me, I put out a video on Instagram that I didn't post anything on Instagram for like 8 days. It was like just over a week when the George Floyd murder took place. I just stopped posting because I wanted to my next post to come from a place of reflection. I wanted to take time to think about it. I just really actually, quite frankly, had no interest in posting my normal real estate stuff.
Right.
That was what I felt at the time. Not the right move overall. I wouldn't advise anybody who's marketing or branding themselves in this business to go silent on these platforms for 8 straight days. That's not a good strategy. It's just how I felt and what I did in that particular time frame. But here's them talking about saying agents shouldn't be afraid to talk about controversial topics.
Well, right. I mean, right here it says, don't be afraid to have an opinion that you think might be controversial, because that's how conversations get started and how change gets initiated.
So I want to hear your take on this. I chose to talk about it, and I came from the place similar that we did in Racket Number 1 with the Newsday investigation and what I'm going to do to make sure I'm part of the solution and not part of the problem. And then you have, other people that are, if you go down their feed, they've made this their entire thing. I'm not saying that's better, but yes. Where are you on the spectrum? I never talk about politics ever, right? Because I'm here to talk about real estate. There's a lot of topics that we can talk about that can become very divisive. I try to stay away from that. I can be divisive in terms of my industry, real estate, like calling out a CEO of some brokerage, but it's my industry. Like, I'm willing to have the debate on this kind of stuff because I know it so well. Right. But controversial topics like this, where do you sit on it? So
I'm only talking about me personally. I mean, I actually personally read everybody's points, what other side they're on. I actually have been trying really hard
and in this there is no sides. Like,
no, of course, but I'm just, I don't mean it that way. And I apologize for that. But I've been trying really hard actually, because I feel like I'm only in control of what I can control. So I've been really spending a lot of my time having conversations with my children. I feel like that's probably the most important place for me to do it. not necessarily on Instagram. I don't need my 800 followers to heart how I necessarily feel. But I do need my children to understand the impact that they have on the future, and that they have on what their lives are going to be like and what their reality is. And so I've actually been spending more of my time, like when I watched that Newsday video, I had one of my kids actually watch it with me so that they could understand sort of what is happening even in my own personal job, with, you know, things that people think that, you know, aren't big problems obviously are. So that's how I've been dealing with it, mostly sort of at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Katie Lance, who I think very highly of, I've done a panel with her. She wrote a book on social media specific to the real estate industry. She's done a whole bunch of good stuff. You know, one of the things she said, this is a great start, but what else can you do? And she was talking about, and maybe we can put that slide up right here. She's talking about the black square that last Tuesday, Blackout Tuesday, everybody's posting the black square.
The black square, yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, I agree that if that's something that you're passionate about posting, that could be a great start. But there were so many people that posted that because they were shamed into posting that, quite honestly.
Well, it's funny because you got a few texts like, hey, are you going to be posting a black square? Like,
which makes me automatically
not want
revolt
to, right?
And not want to do anything somebody's texting me telling me I should do. There's a really well-known Instagram handle in the real estate industry that had multiple DMs of people shaming that person because they didn't post any black square or anything, like shaming and unfollow. I noticed, like, even up until I put that video out, I had posted nothing that during that specific day I was unfollowed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, by people. Yeah.
When you put the video out, you were unfollowed?
No.
Prior
on
to
that day, that Blackout Tuesday, I didn't put out a black square. I didn't post anything. I didn't post real estate. I didn't post anything. And there was tremendous amount of shaming people that you don't know. If they're having conversations with their 3 children on the backside, if they're spending time planning training for their team based off of a Newsday investigation, like all these different things, the shaming out there, it's quite hilarious. It's like people like, I'm so much better than these people because I posted this. So that's got to stop. But what doesn't need to stop, what should never stop, is our ability to do more. And that's what's Katie's talking about here. There's so much more that one post can do in one specific day. Have tough, uncomfortable conversations like this. Like have the conversation with people in your community or on podcast. Think about what long-term changes your business and your company can implement. What systems can your business actually implement to be part of the solution, not part of the problem?
Right.
I don't think that anybody... I think you should be cautious always about what you post, and you should be cautious about taking, like, I probably even took too many like opinions, you know, wrapped into this, but this is how I feel. So I'm gonna tell you how I feel, right?
Right. Well, but again, that's what they're saying though too, is like you're supposed to speak your truth.
Yeah.
Because then you're supposed to learn from it. Because then it's the only way you then learn is to put out what you think, and then
I also don't think if
reaction.
You started an Instagram channel or a YouTube channel or whatever, and your goal was to only post 100% of things about real estate, I also don't think that you should feel pressured, shamed, or anything else to not post that content on your specific channel. You should do what you want to do, right?
Right.
Like,
well, I think it also has what do you feel the most comfortable doing? And again, this is a very uncomfortable time. Mm-hmm. So I think you follow your heart, and if you get unfollowed, I mean, I don't think that's reflective of you. It's clearly more reflective of them, but.
Yeah. And I would encourage everybody, whether you're going to change your marketing approach, keep it the same, whether you're going to talk about this like we chose to talk about it, that you respect everybody else that is going through this process the way that they're choosing to, that they're expressing themselves the way they're choosing to express themselves, and you support people, and that you find a way to actually take some action, to actually do some work, to actually get your hands dirty in this problem, which is shared by all of us.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I think
so they're the marketeers of the week.
I think we've done it.
I think they covered an important topic, one that we're all going to continue, I think.
And we all should continue to have the conversations. I think that that's really what all the protests are about too, is just to make sure that it's a movement, not just a moment. So.
Yep. All right. Good show.
It was good.
Long show. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
Keep it real, and we'll see you here next week.
Bye, guys.